Welcome back to Talk Time, the channel where we dive into conversations that matter. Today, we are going to be tackling an important topic: how carving out me time and practicing mindfulness can boost your mental health. If you're a new college grad or stepping into the job market or just a new job seeker, you know how overwhelming it can feel. New responsibilities, new routines, and so many expectations. Today, to help us dive into this conversation, we are joined by mental health nurse practitioner Becky Dyer and therapist Daniel Lastly, who will share their expertise on the importance of taking care of your mental health by prioritizing me time and mindfulness. With everything that's going on in the world, if you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, or just out of sync, this video is for you. Becky, Daniel, can you take a moment to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Hi, I'm Becky Dyer. I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner, and I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you, Becky. Daniel, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Daniel Lastly, and I am a licensed professional counselor. I have been a therapist with an agency called the Lilac Center for a little over 2 years now, and I greatly enjoy helping people improve their mental health and their daily functioning and effectiveness.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think that that's something that we all need and need to thrive on, is improving our mental health. So thank you both for that introduction. We are super excited to have you here with us today. Before we dive in, if you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and also hit that notification bell. We truly appreciate your support. Now, let's go ahead and get into this key. Why me time and mindfulness matters. Becky, what started this conversation and the topic is that, you were a recent graduate as a nurse practitioner, and my partner was in class with you, but he graduated he had his walk earlier this year. And so as we were at his graduation, we sit there and we were chatting and we were seeing all the new grads. And we talked a little bit about how stressful it must feel for them entering the job market, especially now with so many layoffs happening and so much stuff going on. We just kind of had this brief conversation about how stressful it must feel for them. And then we decided, maybe this is a good topic to talk about on the channel. So I know this is kind of a silly question, but Daniel, Becky, if you want to elaborate, what exactly do we consider me time?
So, for me, what I consider me time is just the time that I put aside for myself and don't let all of the other stressors of life, whether it's work, family, bills, planning things for whatever, just putting all of that
Yeah.
aside and just focusing on what I need at that moment. So that's what it is for me.
In our practice, we use an approach called dialectical behavior therapy,
Mm.
DBT. And DBT is all about behavioral skills, coping skills. And these are ways to improve your quality of life, to handle life effectively. And this all falls under this me time. This is self-care. This is falls under a skill we call ABC Please.
I
And
like that.
in DBT, it's full of acronyms. It's just a mnemonic, a way to
Yeah.
remember these things. So the ABC stands for, the A stands for accumulate positives, accumulate positive experiences. So that means both in the short term, finding positive, pleasant things to do for yourself, sometimes alone, sometimes with other people. But you can do things spontaneously, take a walk, go to a museum, read a book, take time to just do something pleasant for yourself.
Yeah.
That can mean taking an extra 5 or 10 minutes in a hot shower, or take a bubble bath, or make your favorite meal, watch a comfort show. Those are short term, sometimes spontaneous things that you just do because it's good for you. We also want people to accumulate long-term positives. So that means setting a long-term activity, like planning a trip.
Mm-hmm.
something that's going to be a few months or even a year out. And you may have to do lots of little things to make that happen along the way. And so carving out time to plan for, to do the things you need to do to make this thing happen in the future. And that delayed gratification on some of these things can be very, very powerful as well, that you are taking time toward this pleasant, positive experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
I love
B
that.
in yeah, the B in ABC, please, stands for build mastery. So this is choosing things, choosing pursuits that require some skill. And again,
Mhm.
that's a huge variety of things. This falls under the category of hobbies usually.
Okay.
That can be like woodworking or knitting, crochet, needlepoint,
Mhm.
cooking, so many things, playing an instrument, writing poetry, these things that require some skill to get started, and you can continuously build on that skill, challenge yourself. And that tends to produce a lot of those feel good chemicals in the brain, the
Yeah.
dopamine that's going
Mhm.
to help you feel like you've accomplished something, that you're doing something that is a challenge. You can challenge yourself and you can continuously increase the level of challenge for those things. The C stands for cope ahead. And that's really more of an emotion regulation skill. I don't need to get into that here, but it can be actually in this case, especially if somebody's like seeking employment, being able to cope ahead for an interview
Hmm.
Mhm.
or for just settling down into a job search, being able to just plan for how you're going to deal with potentially stressful situations, have
Yeah.
that plan in place and envision how it's going to go, that you can handle whatever gets thrown at you, whatever unexpected things might pop up, you're going to be able to handle
Yeah. And I mean, that makes so much sense. So,
that. Yeah. The please this is all about physical well-being. So the PL
mm,
stands for attend to physical illness. That's a weird part of the acronym, but we want to deal with our physical illness. Any immediate things that can also this is about vulnerabilities. So if
hmm,
we're not attending to our physical illness, chronic pain, chronic fatigue, whatever existing physical
very
conditions we
true.
have, we need to attend to those because not doing that increases our vulnerabilities to negative emotions, stress, and the like. The first E stands for eat a balanced, nutritious meal.
Hmm.
So we want to be eating right, eating appropriately,
Yeah.
getting adequate nutrition. A stands for avoid mood altering substances. So
Mhm.
and again, people use things recreationally,
Yeah.
but when we are under the influence, we are more vulnerable to certain emotions, and
Very
we
true.
may have a harder time acting effectively, behaving effectively toward our goals.
Yeah.
Uh, so then the S stands for sleep. We want to make sure that we're getting adequate sleep and doing whatever we need to do. And Becky can talk somewhat about some on the medical side, what may
Mhm.
be able to be done there for sleep. But just having a good routine can be a huge part of that. And we all know if we're not getting enough sleep, we are vulnerable to our emotions.
Yeah. Very true.
And then
These
the
are all
final E
very good
stands
points.
for exercise.
Mhm.
So we're not talking about necessarily having a trainer, joining a gym, any of those things. Those things are always fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. Increasing your activity, your physical activity, and again, Becky can talk about the medical benefits
Mhm.
of increasing your physical activity, what all that does to your brain chemistry and your overall body functioning. But all of those things combined, this is just physical wellness, and it helps to decrease your vulnerabilities.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's very, very important. So, Becky, anything you want to elaborate on there?
Yeah, no, Daniel brings up a lot of really good information because a lot of times we don't think about eating nutritious and sleeping and how that actually is me time. And that is
Guilty.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of times when we think about, okay, well, I'm going to take me time, it might be sitting down and reading a book for a half an hour. And so we forget that setting a night routine and getting that restful sleep to where you feel rested in the morning, that is just as important as setting those, 15 to 30 minutes aside to do something that you enjoy and that helps to stimulate your brain, and and maybe it's unlocking that creative aspect of your brain and doing
Very true.
painting or something like that. So we always forget that nutrition is just as important, sleep is just as important, making sure that we're moving our body and that
Yeah.
we're getting exercise, that all of that is just as important in our well-being.
So yeah, I mean, those are all such good, valid points. I mean, I know, it's not about being selfish. It's really about the self-care. And,
Hmm.
studies have shown, and you guys have also said here, that just setting aside that 15 to 30 minutes a day can help reduce your stress. It can boost your mood and even improve your focus. I know for me, my me time is being out and doing work in the yard. It's that
Hmm.
something that I ever thought I would really enjoy. But over time, I've come to really love it because I just put my headphones on, put on some music, and I can spend hours outside just doing that. And that's my me time to kind of get away from everything that's going on in the world and just focus on doing something that I really love and that I really enjoy. And so, and the gratification comes from that when I finish and I step back and I look and I'm like, oh wow, I just did that, and so that is the gratification I get for that, me time, which
Hmm.
I know is very important for me, with my still ongoing search for employment and dealing with everything else that's going on in the world. So yeah,
Hmm.
very important for the me time. So
Hmm.
we've talked about the me time. Let's talk a little bit about the mindfulness of it all. So when we talk about mindfulness, Becky, Daniel, what are your thoughts on mindfulness?
So I'll have Daniel field this question first, just because Daniel, with his background in counseling, has a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, I was introduced to mindfulness at a very difficult point in my life. Uh, I was experiencing a great deal of depression and
Hmm.
anxiety, to the point where it was interfering with my day-to-day life dramatically, and to where I was possibly uh, in danger of hurting myself.
Mm.
Uh, and I was taught a very simple meditation and was told to practice it every day for 20 minutes, like it was taking medicine. And the change that I experienced through that was so powerful, it became a daily practice for me, and it still is more than 15 years later. And what it has done for me in terms of just my ability to function in the world, how I deal with my emotions, how I tackle important tasks, is dramatically improved. So I can't overstate the value of mindfulness. Meditation is just one form of
Mhm.
mindfulness. Uh, you can practice mindfulness doing anything.
Hmm.
The definition of mindfulness is, and this is from John Kabat-Zinn, who helped to really bring meditation to the United States and put it in language that people can really relate to. But his definition is, mindfulness is paying attention, putting your attention on purpose to the here and now, the present moment,
Mm,
without judgment.
I like that.
And it is surprisingly hard to do. Our
Yeah.
big, complicated brains are just really good at diving in, getting swept up in our thoughts and feelings. And what we know is that when we do it all the time. Most people do that all the time. They're just caught up in their thoughts, or one thought leads to another. It just goes on and on. And most of the time, it doesn't cause problems. But when it's centered on a negative thought, a negative emotion,
Mm.
that getting swept up in it, what people call it spiraling, bunny trailing, there are a lot of different words for it. But when that happens around a negative thought or a negative emotion, it extends it, it draws it out, and it intensifies it. And so that's the definition of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So mindfulness is a superpower to reduce suffering,
Mm-hmm.
increase the ability to concentrate, increases your ability to tolerate negative emotions and behave more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very good talking points there. Very good.
Um,
It's important to combine those,
mhm.
that me time and mindfulness together, because that's good. So go ahead, Becky.
I was just going to say that just one thing I always like to tell patients when I talk to them about mindfulness is just that when whatever you're doing, even, if it's like meditation or you're doing like grounding techniques or deep breathing, don't get mad at yourself if your mind wanders. Because a lot of times, that's one of the biggest things I hear is people will say, I just can't do that because my mind just wanders. And you go, okay, acknowledge that
Mm,
your mind wandered. Don't get mad at yourself for it and just bring it back. So
yeah.
don't let yourself get caught up in the fact that your mind wandered. Just when you notice it, acknowledge it, bring it back and go back to if it's meditation or deep breathing and but don't get mad at yourself. We're all
Yeah,
learning, and it's a continually learning process. So,
Right.
absolutely.
And in
Absolutely.
fact, the whole point is to notice that your mind has started to wander, that
Mm,
you notice this and you don't
mhm,
judge yourself for it. You
mhm,
just gently return your attention back to what it is you're doing,
mhm,
what you intend to be doing. Whether
yeah.
if that's meditation, that may be focusing on your breath, or it may be part of a guided meditation, a
mhm,
visualization. It could be any number of things. But in other ways, practicing mindfulness just means putting as much of your attention as you can on a task.
Hmm.
That can be folding your laundry, that you are attending to that task. That can be, Kenneth, your yard work.
Yeah.
That if you put your full attention on pulling weeds, or
Right.
uh, trimming a bush, or whatever it is, you're going to experience thoughts. The gray matter in our skulls
mhm,
produces thoughts. The
Hmm.
neurons fire. So that is going to result in a thought, in a memory, in a body sensation. You will notice those things and let them pass, and keep your attention. This I really call mindfulness working out your attention muscle.
mhm.
Oh, I like
So
that.
this is about
Yeah.
strengthening that muscle that
Hmm.
says, I choose where my attention goes.
Mhm,
Yeah, I like that. I like that. That's, and I think that that's something that's very doable for anyone that's listening to
mhm,
practice that me time and that mindfulness, just to
mhm,
kind of recenter and refocus yourself. And I think that that's something that's very, very important. So one question I have is I do my me time mindfulness when I'm in the yard, but there are also other things that I do when I focus on that. Do you think it's better for people, the audience that's listening? Do you think it's more important for them to do that in the morning, or is it better to do that in the evening, or is it just a balance of both?
I would say it doesn't matter. It
Mm,
doesn't matter. And it's really based on your cycles, your work schedule, your other commitments in life. Whatever it is, whatever that is, setting aside time, scheduling it, is
mhm,
going to be the most helpful thing, especially early on in your
yeah.
in developing a practice. You being very deliberate about it, scheduling it, setting that time aside. And
Yeah.
whether that's starting, I tend to recommend 10 minutes at least
Hmm.
for mindfulness. It's just like any workout. If you're not putting enough time into it, you're not going to see results.
Very
Mhm.
true.
If you can also push yourself too far in the early stages.
Mhm.
If you think you got to do 30 straight minutes, you're going to burn out. You're going to feel frustrated. It's going to be much harder to stick with. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
start fairly small, 10
Mhm.
minutes, maybe 15, and see how that goes. And then as you gain some skill, as you gain some confidence with it, you may be able to increase that. I love a 20-minute cycle. I think that's a really doable
Hmm.
amount to aim for, and that doesn't take excessive amount of time out from your day, but it's a really nice break.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's important for people, especially somebody that's starting out and starting to practice this. And it's probably a good idea to just put it in your calendar, set a reminder on your phone, and be consistent about taking that time. And I think people will see, and including myself, will see the benefit of making sure that you are taking that time and that you're consistent in doing it. So yeah, very, very good points there as well. So kind of to sum it up, really is me time is your personal retreat, and mindfulness is about paying attention on purpose. Together, they are a powerhouse for your mental health. So let's talk a little bit about managing energy and anxiety. So, when we talk about managing energy and anxiety, what are some of the tips for staying calm and focused, even when you're in kind of a high pressure situation?
So from um, a PMHN, from a PMHNP aspect as opposed to a therapist aspect, I mean, we have a lot of similar things that we say, but I come from more of the functionality of the brain where therapy comes from the emotional and um, I'm not sure how I'm trying to even say this, but more of just that emotional brain where mine's all about neurons, right? so,
Yeah.
um, but things that I recommend for people to do when they are having that heightened anxiety for whatever reason um, is just kind of bringing down the cortisol in your body, which is ways we do that is we can deep breathing is one that we can do because it when we take those deep breaths in, that stimulates our vagus nerve, which helps to
Hmm.
reduce our anxiety. We can also, and Daniel can talk about the tip skill because that's a DBT
Yes.
skill. Yeah, and so I'll let Daniel talk about that because he knows more about that acronym and all of the steps.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact steps, but we can also do something that kind of, for a lack of a better term, shocks our body into being in the here and now, whether it's
Yeah.
like popping one of those warhead candies because they're super sour, or just anything like that. So it's reducing that cortisol in our body and which brings down our fight or flight, because when we get anxious, we get in that fight or flight. And so we want to bring it back down and get out of
Right.
that fight or flight.
Right. That when we are in that mode, when we get to that point, it shrinks our awareness and
Mm-hmm.
limits our ability to make choices.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, taking some time to do some physical things. TIPP is a skill. It is what's called a distress tolerance skill.
Mhm.
And that heightened anxiety is absolutely where that tends to come from. Anxiety is about the future, thinking about the future, perceiving the possibility of danger, of catastrophe,
Yeah.
so it's envisioning worst case scenarios. And ultimately it boils down to predicting the future, which we can't do. We can
No.
we can guess at what might happen, but we don't know for sure. So what we want to do is bring our
Great.
attention back to the here and now and hopefully try to reduce this physical response that we're experiencing. So tip, the T stands for temperature, and that is typically the classic way to do that, to change your body temperature, is to take a a bowl, a large bowl of ice water, and plunge your face into it. Take a deep breath and plunge your face into that ice water. And that creates, there is a biochemical response that happens. And this works because you are a mammal and it shocks your system and engages the parasympathetic nervous system.
Hmm.
And it changes your temperature, it slows your breathing, and engages that rest and digest system. And this is for cases of extreme panic. Plunging your face into ice water can be very, very effective. The I stands for intense exercise. And this is, obviously if that is contraindicated for you due to some physical condition, don't do this. But for folks in reasonably good health, engaging in some short-term intense exercise. The classic for me is jumping jacks, something you can do in place that will rapidly increase your heart rate, get a lot of different muscle groups moving at the same time, and it does a very similar thing in terms of engaging that parasympathetic nervous system. And it just brings the intensity of the emotion back down. The first P stands for paired muscle relaxation. And that is taking any bilateral group of muscles, your hands, your forearms, your arms, legs, and tensing those muscles up as much as you can for 5-10 seconds, and then releasing it.
Huh. That's something I can practice
And
as
doing
well.
that, over and over again. And it can produce a very similar physical response.
Hmm.
Then we do paced breathing. And this is what Becky was talking about with deep breathing. And there are several ways to do paced breathing. There's something called the box breathing method, or four square breathing, which is you breathe in on a count of 4, you hold for a count of 4, you exhale on a count of 4, and you hold that exhaled breath for a count of 4.
Yeah.
And another technique would be, what do they call it? 4-7-8, where you inhale on a count of 4, you hold for 7, and then you exhale very slowly on a count of 8. And
Hmm.
that's another, when your exhale is longer than your inhale, it slows your heart rate. It again, it engages that parasympathetic nervous system. So these are 4 techniques that can definitely help with anxiety. And it doesn't have to get to the point of panic, but when you notice that you're becoming more anxious, these are especially the last 2, paced breathing, paired muscle relaxation. You can use those together. So
Yeah.
you inhale and hold and tense, and then you relax and slowly breathe out.
Yeah.
That can be a very, very effective way to reduce anxiety and
Yeah, and I
bring
think
yourself.
that's a very good way, a good point, especially for myself, and I'm sure for lots of others. Like if you're getting ready to go on a job interview or you're getting ready for a virtual meeting, even when sometimes I get a little bit nervous when I'm setting up these episodes and doing the recordings, then I have to sit in front of my computer for a minute and take that deep breath just to kind of say, oh, what am I nervous about? But I especially practice that when I know that I'm doing like an interview or something, just to kind of reset my mind and kind of get rid of all the noise that's in there and be mindful and present in that moment. So those are
Yeah.
very, very good insights for people to, to take away.
I was just gonna add that you know, it doesn't matter where you're at, especially those last two, where with the paired muscle contraction and relaxation and deep breathing, you can do those anywhere.
Yeah.
If you're in a meeting that is a difficult meeting, because as we know, not every meeting is, fun to get through. And sometimes,
Yeah.
especially right now, with a lot of places having budget cuts and having to cut back and stuff, it may not be a very fun time, and it may be stressful and increase your anxiety, but you can always do deep breathing in the moment there,
Yeah. Very true.
and so it doesn't, I mean, you may not have a bowl of water next to you, of cold water, where you can, to
Yeah.
reset your
Right.
temperature, and maybe doing jumping jacks at that moment wouldn't be,
Right.
appropriate, but you can always do deep breathing, and you can, use, your legs or your hands. You can clench your hands, and, and
Yeah.
it's not something that calls attention to what you're doing, and it's just something that you can use in that moment for yourself.
Yeah. You can clench your toes in your shoes, something similar. It's just invisible. No one's going to notice you doing that.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of those nice little things that you can do. And like I said, anywhere, because you can always do, because box
Yeah.
breathing is probably the one that I teach the most to patients for anxiety, just because I think it's easy to remember, because it's inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, So it's pretty easy to remember. And when you get in a heightened anxiety place, sometimes remembering how to do things can be difficult. Where if it's, something like box breathing, that's easy to remember, and I can access, that how to pretty quickly. So that's
Yeah.
probably one of
Very
my
I
true.
really
favorites. It's
encourage clients. I really encourage clients on their exhale to do it through, like, they're breathing out through a straw.
Mhm, mhm,
That's an easy way to slow down that exhale.
mhm.
Because when you are in panic mode, your breathing becomes much more shallow.
Yep. And if we can get that deep breathing, that stimulates that vagus nerve, which helps to stimulate that parasympathetic nervous system, and brings down,
Yeah. Very, very
it
good
brings down
insight,
our
guys.
cortisol, it brings down our epinephrine levels, and it just helps to relax us, and
Yeah.
reduce that anxiety. It is really important. And like I said, it's just something that you don't have to have a lot of time either to do it. You
Right.
can do a couple of those deep breathing, you can do it a couple of times, get that relief, and then continue with whatever
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah.
There is another technique for dealing with that anxiety. It's a grounding technique,
Mhm.
and sometimes it goes by the mnemonic of 5, 4, 3, 2,
Yes.
1, which is naming 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. So we want to engage all 5 senses in the here and now. Bring
Mhm.
yourself back to right here, right now, using your 5 senses.
And that's another one that's real nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Such great insight. So I wanted to remind everyone, that taking time for yourself isn't a luxury. It's actually a necessity. And by practicing your me time and mindfulness, you're giving your brain and body a chance to reset and recharge. So while I was doing my research, I should say, for this episode, I came across this really good quote that I wanted to share. And it reads, "Being mindful means that we suspend judgment for a time, set aside immediate goals for the future, and take in the present moment as it is rather than what we would like it to be." And that's a quote from Mark Williams, who's a British clinical psychologist and one of the leading researchers on mindful based cognitive therapy. So I wanted to share that because that quote kind of captures the simple yet profound truth that taking a break, even briefly, can help reset and recharge. So that's something that everyone can relate to, especially now in this fast paced world. So before we wrap up, Daniel, Becky, any last thoughts or takeaways for the audience that you want to share?
I would say
Right.
a final thought for me would be
Cut, cut,
to
cut.
approach mindfulness gently for yourself at first. You
Cut, cut,
will
cut.
find
What's
yourself
happening with my internet?
with judgments, having judgments. That's
Mhm.
normal, that's natural. Simply recognize it and don't judge yourself for having judgments.
I think for me as well, just
Shoot.
like what you're saying, just take the time, even if it's only, a short amount of time, and just don't judge yourself in the moment. And just to really let all of those periphery things fall away for a couple of moments. And,
Okay.
we can get so caught up in all of that periphery stuff, and
Yeah.
just letting all of that just fall away for a moment and really just focusing on yourself,
Yeah.
and not
Just
judging yourself.
start.
So, mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Just start, just even if it's just for a short amount of time. And like you were saying earlier, Daniel, just developing that muscle, and being able to take the time for yourself.
Yeah. So, for anybody that found this helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more mental health tips. And let us know in the comments, what is your favorite way to spend your me time and mindfulness? So, thanks everybody for watching. Remember, take care of your mind and it will
Mhm.
take care of you. Join us next week as we continue this mental health conversation with clinical and mental health counselor, where we are discussing parenting, social media, and the real
Mhm.
impact on mental health. So thanks for joining. See you on the next one. Ciao.